Hey guys, today I'm going to be going over some Kattis examples, and these are very simple problems I'm doing, and I'm by no means an expert programmer. This is going to be like learning how to code with me. And I'm using Kattis because they have really fun challenges and it teaches you how to code in different languages. So I know Python pretty well, but I don't know C++ and Java as well, which I'd like to learn. So I'm going to be starting at the very beginning. I had another Kattis profile where I kind of went through pretty far and did all these challenges, but I created a new Kattis profile with a different email specifically so I can go through each one fresh and do it once in Python and then once with C++ and Java. So as you can see, the first challenge is Hello World. That's the first program you'll make in any programming language. I've already done this in Python and C++ here. And then Java, you can see I had a bunch of compile errors, and it's because I was having trouble figuring out how to name the main class. So in Kattis, it has to be the same as the public class. So here, the file name hello.java has to match the public class hello, and then you'll see when I go to actually do the next challenge, you have to name the main class. So finally I got it right. So that was just the first one, and now I'm working on the stuck in a time loop feeling that you may see the same day
So
again.
here's
And your
the
strange feeling
story
came
line.
to be when you woke up. Everyone seemed to think that it was yesterday morning. The same strange feeling came back in the evening. So this wizard says he can break you out of the time loop, but you must chant his spell. So every morning when you wake up, he's going to give you a number, and you have to say Abracadabra that many times. So your program has to say how many times you'll say Abracadabra given the input, which is the number the wizard gives you. So here's the file submitted for Python, timeloop.py. And now I'm going to start coding in C++, one of my weak points. So to go to an online compiler, I do have Visual Studio Code, but I haven't updated it in a while. So for now, I'm just going to use these online compilers, and this is programiz.com. It's a good one. It just allows you to quickly run some code. This won't work for more complex projects where you have to have multiple files, but it's a good way to just run simple code like for this problem. And the other thing I'm going to bring up is W3 School C++. This is not sponsored by them. You could go to other websites that have tutorials on each programming language, but I really like this one, and they lay it out by module or by subject that you want to learn. So this is just the intro, getting started with the Hello World program. What I'm interested, I don't know, I'm getting an error there. Okay, so here's all the subjects, and since I'm doing a for loop, let's go see how to do that in C++. The logic is going to be the same in pretty much any language, Java, Python, C++, but the syntax and sometimes exactly how you go about implementing it will be quite different. So in Python, I defined an integer from user input, set a counter of value I equals 1. And for Python, I used the while loop just because the for loop in Python is a little bit different from like any other language, basically. But for C++, I'm going to do, let's see, I need to go back, look in here. So here's my example for loop, for integer. So the syntax here is using 3 values of I inside the arguments. So the first one, integer I equals 0, is your set counter. The second one, in this example, I less than or equal to 10, is kind of the constraint you're setting. And then the third one is what's happening at the end of each loop. So at the end of the loop, the example would add 2 to the counter. So you can see here I'm hesitating at the second statement, I less than or equal to, because for the logic, it's that number is going to have to be set by the user input, by whatever the wizard gives me. So I need to go into my subject lists and go to C++ user input, and here they explain the syntax. And one thing I forgot to add earlier is my line using namespace standard, and you need that in order to do the cout cin. Cout will print a line basically, and then cin is accepting user input. So for those to work, you need the using namespace standard at the beginning. Okay, so now I'm practice running my code after defining a variable for user input. Then I can use that in my second statement, I less than or equal to x. So basically counter, whatever the counter is at, as long as it's less than or equal to the number that the wizard gave me, it's going to continue looping or continue pumping out the number plus Abracadabra. So let's try compiling it in Kattis, and wrong answer. So let's see what I got wrong here. You can just scroll down one, ready to edit and resubmit here. Okay, so debugging is the funnest part of programming, right? Being sarcastic. What did I do wrong here? Type a number. That's going to give a bad answer in Kattis because while I might use it to test my code, like for me, not a computer, I need something to prompt me to enter a number. But the Kattis, when Kattis is actually running it to see if you get any errors, it doesn't expect a prompt like a human would to input an answer. It just expects that it's going to input a number. Okay, so there, if we replace the human prompt with just 2 quotes, let's try it again. And it worked. In 0.00 seconds. I don't know how that's possible. So it's in the thousandths of seconds at least, which is much faster than Python 3. Interesting. All the languages have their pros and cons, and I think C++ probably tends to be faster unless you have to allocate memory and deallocate memory. I don't know. I don't know C++ like I know Python, so this is part of why I'm doing this. And now I'm ready to do my Java version. So same exact problem, but I'm doing it in Java now. So there's kind of 2 aspects to this. There's the problem solving aspect where you have to figure out how you're going to do it, and then the syntax aspect of it, which is language specific. And the problem solving is sometimes the hard part, but in the interest of learning Java, I'm starting out with the easy ones. Okay, so for a for loop in Java, it's looking pretty similar to C++ as opposed to Python. But there are going to be some differences. So instead of cout, we have system.out, print line. And Java is also object-oriented programming, OOP. So we've got to have the class public static void underneath that. And one thing to note is that whatever you call the public class is, in this case, mine's time loop. You can see at the top there. that's going to match the Java file name. And Kattis, you can go check in Kattis for the problem what the default name for the file will be. And then just using the syntax example here, I'm looping for starting the counter int1 equals int I equals 1. That kind of looks like a 1 from here, but it's int I. And the second statement is I less than x. Third statement is I plus plus, which is the Java syntax for add 1 to I at the end of each loop. And I want my output for each loop to be system.out.println, and what it's actually going to print is the number I, whichever loop it's on, plus the string Abracadabra. There are some problems in here, but this is part of learning. You're getting to see the whole learning process. So now I'm looking in the Java tutorial subjects for, what am I looking for? User input. Okay, so we've got to use the scanner class to get user input. Whatever number the wizard gives us in Kattis is got to be scanned in or input by the scanner class. Okay, so we first have to import that class, import java.util.scanner. And then to use it, create an object of the class and use any available methods found in the scanner class documentation. So in the example they've shown on W3 schools, it's next line, which is used to read strings. Mine is actually going to be an integer, so next line will not work. What do you think I would use for an integer? If next line is for reading in strings, what do you think the command would be to read in an integer? So you can see I'm again entering a human prompt, which I'll have to delete after the fact. Enter number for system.out.println. So that's an output. It's going to print that. And now I'm defining my integer x equals my object. So my object comes from the first line under public static void main, where I say scanner, or I typed scanner. My object equals new scanner, and then the arguments system.n. So now the integer is going to be by typing int x, I'm defining the location that the variable x will be saved in and also the type of data it is, an integer. And then on the right hand side of the equals sign, I'm saying what we're going to store in that location is from my object. I've made a mistake here, which I'll catch later. Can you find it? It's not going to be my object dot next line. It will be something else. So you can see it kind of cuts off the error code here. What it says, string cannot be converted. So it's basically an error of incompatible data types. If I've defined the variable x as an integer, but then use the next line function, which is or method, sorry, not function. Next line is a built-in method in scanner. It's used for strings. So I can't import I can't read in user input that's a string and then call it an integer. Okay, so I'm deleting it. Okay, if we scroll down, next int, parentheses, reads an integer value from the user input. So it's next int is the actual method I want. Alright, now we've got a new error, and it's from my system.out.println syntax. So I've got something wrong with my syntax here, where I put in parentheses what it's typing out, or printing out. I had I, comma, abracadabra, where in Java, the correct syntax is not a comma, but a plus. So if you're printing out different types of data, one is an integer, one is a string, they should be delimited by a plus sign, not a comma. Okay, so now I'm testing it again with different numbers. It is actually working. I'm just now looking at, oh, actually it's not working. It's one short. So can you find the error I made in my second statement? Should be 1 less than or equal to x. So let's run it again. Enter number 4. And there are actually 4 abracadabras printed out, but they're not printing out on new lines. So how can we add a carriage return or add an enter after each abracadabra? Okay, so here I just Googled it. When all else fails, you can just Google your question, and here's the answer. Just \n. Alright, so that worked for adding a carriage return or new line to a string in Java. Now we're ready to go back to Kattis and enter the solution. Just scrolling down, there's some other ways to do this. \n, \r, or \r and \n. Those are also called a carriage return and line feed or CRLF. Using both the R and N gives you double space. I'm operating Windows OS, so apparently that does make a difference. And you can also use the line.separator, system.lineSeparator method, adding new line characters for an HTML page. You can use break. So there's different ways on how to add a new line. So I'm going to take out one of those and just use the \r, copy this, and then go back into Kattis, paste my answer. And here's what I was talking about. Main class, it has to match the public class at the top, which also must match the name of the file. Now I've made an error here, which I'll catch shortly, but can you find what it is? A hint, it's exactly the same mistake I just made on the C++ solution. I forgot to remove the human prompt. Like, this is what you would put if it were an actual program on a GUI or something where you want someone to enter a number. So without that, it'll just have a cursor awaiting input. So I tested it without that to make sure it works. Now I'm just going to delete that line. The system.out.println enter number, since we don't need that. Submit again. And there you go. Correct answer. That took 0.12 seconds in Java. So longer than both C++ and Python. Which makes sense because it's object-oriented. Do all that for a very simple, fast operation. So that was the first two. In my next video, I'll be going over the R2 problem.